The next morning, Obina slowly opened his eyes. Soft, cold air touched his skin. He frowned in confusion. This was not his hut. The leaking roof was gone. The cracked walls were gone. He quickly sat up. His eyes widened immediately. The room around him looked massive. Golden decorations covered the walls. Expensive furniture filled every corner. The soft bed beneath him felt unreal. Obina looked down at himself. Even his clothes had changed. He rushed toward the large mirror nearby and froze. He looked richer, cleaner, more powerful. Then suddenly a knock came from the door. A man entered respectfully. "Good morning, sir." "Sir?" Obina's heart began racing. Obina stepped outside carefully and nearly lost his breath. A huge mansion stood before him. Luxury cars filled the compound. Workers moved around respectfully. Security guards opened doors for him immediately. Everyone treated him like royalty. The poor village boy who once suffered for food, suddenly living like a king. Obina smiled slowly. For the first time in his life, he felt important. Within days, his name spread everywhere. People across nearby cities talked about him. Social media became filled with his pictures. News blogs called him the young millionaire. Women admired him instantly. Businessmen begged to work with him. Even politicians invited him to important events. Money entered his accounts endlessly. Every business he touched succeeded immediately. It almost felt supernatural. And slowly, Obina began enjoying the attention too much. At first, Obina still remembered home. He bought new clothes for his parents, sent money to the village regularly, and promised to build them a better house. His mother cried tears of joy. His father proudly told villagers, "My son has finally changed our lives." Obina visited once or twice, but each time he returned quickly to the city. The luxury life pulled him back constantly. Soon, Obina's life became completely different. Rich friends surrounded him daily. Luxury restaurants, expensive hotels, private parties, nightclubs. Everywhere he went, people praised him. Nobody reminded him of poverty anymore, and slowly, he stopped answering calls from old village friends. The people who once knew him best could barely recognize him now. The nights became louder. Alcohol flowed endlessly. Music shook the mansion walls every weekend. Beautiful women constantly surrounded him. Obina spent money carelessly. He bought expensive watches, designer clothes, jewelry, luxury cars. And the more people praised him, the more arrogant he became. Deep inside, something was changing, something dangerous. One night after a party, Obina sat alone, holding a glass of alcohol. Then suddenly, his eyes fell on the magical beads. For a brief moment, he remembered the old woman's warning, "Never let pride enter your heart." But Obina laughed softly. He looked around at his mansion proudly. "Nothing can happen to me now." That was the moment everything truly began to change. Back in the village, his parents waited constantly. Every evening, his mother sat outside their hut, hoping to see him. His father defended him proudly. "He is busy building our future." But weeks became months, and Obina never came. Sometimes his mother cried quietly at night, not because she wanted money, but because she missed her son. One rainy evening, his mother suddenly became very sick. Her body grew weaker daily. Villagers became worried immediately. His father tried contacting Obina repeatedly, but the calls never connected. Obina was always busy, partying, traveling, enjoying life. Meanwhile, his mother continued whispering his name weekly, hoping he would come home. The city was alive that night. Bright lights flashed endlessly across the streets. Music echoed from expensive buildings. Luxury cars lined up outside one of the most popular nightclubs in the city. Inside the club, everything felt wild. People danced loudly beneath colorful lights. Glasses clinked together. Laughter filled the air. The atmosphere was full of excitement, money, and endless celebration. And at the center of it all was Obina, dressed in expensive designer clothes, surrounded by beautiful women and wealthy friends. He looked like a man who had conquered the world. Everyone wanted his attention. Everyone wanted to sit near him. Some praised him, some laughed at his jokes, others secretly wished they could become like him. Obina loved every moment of it. The poor village boy who once struggled to eat 2 meals a day was now spending more money in one night than his parents had seen in years. He leaned back proudly on the luxurious couch, holding a glass of alcohol, while music blasted. Around him, one of his friends shouted excitedly, "Obina, tonight is yours!" The group cheered loudly. Another bottle was opened immediately. More drinks were poured. The party became even louder. Obina laughed confidently. For a moment, he truly believed nothing could ever go wrong in his life again. Then suddenly, his phone began vibrating on the table beside him. At first, he ignored it. Calls had become normal for him now. Business partners, women, people asking for favors. Everyone wanted something from him, but the phone continued vibrating nonstop. Obina frowned slightly and picked it up carelessly. Unknown number. He almost ignored it again. Something made him answer. "Hello?" The loud music nearly drowned the voice on the other side. A young boy spoke nervously. "Brother Obina?" Obina struggled to hear properly. "Who is this?" The boy's voice shook slightly. "From the village." Obina recognized the name vaguely. One of the younger boys from back home. He sighed impatiently. "Why are you calling me at this hour?" The boy hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke quickly. "Your mother is very sick." Obina's expression changed slightly. The boy continued speaking desperately. "She keeps calling your name." Obina rubbed his forehead impatiently. The alcohol clouded his thinking. Deep down, a small part of him knew he should listen carefully, but pride had already hardened his heart. He stood up from the couch and walked toward a quieter corner of the club, still holding the phone, still annoyed. "Didn't I already send money home?" he asked angrily. The boy quickly replied, "Yes, but this is serious. Please come back home." The father looked toward the doorway hopefully, as if expecting his son to suddenly appear. But nobody came. Only the sound of rain filled the darkness outside. Back in the city, Obina laughed loudly again as music blasted around him. But for a brief second, the lights inside the nightclub flickered strangely. Only once. Obina noticed it. He looked around briefly, without realizing that this single decision was about to destroy everything.
Morning came quietly. Sunlight entered Obina's luxurious mansion through the giant glass windows. The expensive house looked beautiful, but inside, everything felt empty. Obina sat silently on the edge of his bed, still wearing the same clothes from last night. His eyes looked tired. He barely slept. His mother's voice kept echoing inside his mind. "Obina." Slowly, he stood up and walked toward the mirror. He stared at himself silently. The expensive clothes, the gold chains, the luxury lifestyle. Suddenly, none of it felt important anymore. He looked at the magical beads on the table carefully. Immediately, the old woman's warning echoed inside his mind again. Never let pride enter your heart. Fear slowly entered Obina's chest. Then suddenly, his phone began ringing. It was his father. Obina hesitated before answering. The old man's weak voice finally spoke. "Your mother waited for you all night." His father continued emotionally. "She died calling your name." Obina's hands began trembling. At that exact moment, crash! The large mirror inside the room shattered by itself. Glass scattered across the floor. Obina stepped back in fear. The room suddenly became cold, very cold. Then, softly, he heard a whisper. "You forgot your home." Obina looked around in panic, but nobody was there. Only silence, only guilt. Slowly, he looked down at the picture of his mother on his phone. And finally, the wealthy young man broke down completely because deep down, he finally realized something painful. Money could not replace family. The mansion felt unbearable now. Every corner reminded Obina of his guilt. Without wasting more time, Obina hurriedly packed a small bag. For the first time in years, he was returning to the village, not as the proud millionaire everyone admired, but as a broken son, filled with regret. Outside the mansion, his expensive cars stood quietly. The same cars that once made him feel powerful, today they meant nothing to him. As he entered his black luxury car, the magical beads around his neck suddenly became warm again. Obina touched them nervously.
Fear slowly entered his chest once more. The old woman's warning echoed again inside his mind. Never forget where you came from. The journey back to the village felt longer than ever. The farther he drove away from the city, the quieter everything became. Soon the tall buildings disappeared. The bright lights disappeared. The noisy streets disappeared. Only empty roads remained, and painful memories. Obina remembered his childhood, running barefoot through the village. His mother cooking small meals with the little they had. His father working tirelessly under the hot sun. The sacrifices they made just to keep him alive. Tears slowly rolled down his face again. Deep down, he knew it was already too late. Meanwhile, dark clouds gathered heavily above the mountains. The wind blew strangely across the lonely road, and somewhere far away, the old woman watched silently from the mountain, as if waiting for something to happen. By evening, Obina finally arrived at the village. The moment his car entered the dusty road, people began staring silently. Nobody smiled. Nobody waved excitedly like before. The villagers only watched him quietly, some with disappointment, others with pity. Obina stepped out of the car slowly. For the first time in years, the village no longer felt welcoming. It felt heavy, painful, ashamed. The rain had stopped earlier, but the ground was still wet. Dark clouds remained above the sky. Obina looked toward his parents' small hut, the same hut he once promised to change forever. Now, it looked lonelier than ever. As he walked closer, he heard soft crying from inside. His heartbeat became faster immediately. Fear and guilt tightened inside his chest. Then slowly, he entered the hut. The atmosphere inside was heartbreaking. Women sat quietly crying. Some elderly villagers whispered emotional prayers. At the center of the room, covered in white cloth, lay his mother, still, silent, gone forever. Obina froze completely. His legs suddenly became weak. For a moment, he could not breathe properly. And finally, Obina broke down completely. He cried loudly beside her body like a helpless little child. The villagers watched silently. Even his father stood quietly in one corner of the hut, heartbroken, disappointed, tired. Then slowly, his father spoke. "Your mother waited for you until her final breath." Those words shattered Obina completely. He lowered his head in unbearable shame. Outside the hut, thunder rumbled across the mountains again, and somewhere far above the village, the old woman watched silently. Night slowly covered the village. The funeral had ended. Most villagers had already gone home quietly. Only silence remained around the small hut. Obina sat alone outside, beneath the cold night sky. His expensive clothes were covered in dust. His eyes were swollen from crying. For the first time in many years, he truly felt empty. Not because he lost money, not because he lost fame, but because he lost something far more important. His mother, the one person who loved him before wealth ever entered his life. Slowly, Obina removed the magical beads from his neck and stared at them quietly. The beads that once brought him riches, fame, luxury, everything he once dreamed about. But now, they only reminded him of his mistakes. Tears rolled down his face again. Then suddenly, the cold wind blew softly across the village, and quietly, the old woman appeared from the darkness, standing silently before him. Obina quickly stood up in shock, but this time, there was no pride left inside him, only pain, only regret. The old woman looked at him sadly. Then she spoke softly. "I warned you." Obina lowered his head immediately in shame. The old woman continued. "Wealth is a gift, but pride destroys every gift." Silence filled the air. Then slowly, Obina fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I lost everything," he whispered painfully. The old woman looked at him quietly, then finally said, "No, you lost yourself." Those words pierced deeply into Obina's heart, because deep down he knew she was right. In his search for wealth and fame, he forgot kindness. He forgot humility. He forgot family. And worst of all, he forgot the people who sacrificed everything for him. The old woman stretched out her hand slowly, and suddenly the magical beads turned dull and lifeless. Their power was gone forever. Obina stared at them silently, but strangely, for the first time, he felt free, because finally he understood the truth. Real wealth is not money. Real wealth is love, family, kindness, humility, respect. The old woman slowly turned and disappeared back into the darkness, leaving Obina alone beneath the quiet night sky. But this time, he was no longer the same man. As the wind blew softly across the village, Obina looked toward his parents' small hut emotionally, and quietly he made a promise to himself to live differently, to become better, to never allow pride destroy his heart again. Never let success make you forget the people who loved you when you had nothing. Wealth without humility destroys the heart, and money can never replace family, love, or the time we fail to cherish.